We never had that kind of trouble in these waters.
We all go a little insane on this island.
You all know me.
Martin, it's all psychological.
Know how I earn a living.
Nobody cares because there is no proof. You catch them, you kill them, you leave them out there.
Get the mirror off my back so I don't have any more of this zone crap.
You've got that.
Welcome back to the Jaws Obsession, where we are here to share with you, prove to you, convince you, or remind you that Jaws is the greatest movie of all time. Thank you very much for returning for Jaws Obsession, episode 98, the expanded Jaws universe, minute number 9. Thank you very much for returning back for another episode. I am your host and author of the Book of Quint, Ryan Dacco. The Book of Quint being the prequel to Jaws, and that's what we are doing here. We're using this prequel to Jaws in order to better understand the events of Jaws. So we're going minute by minute through the feature film Jaws, 1975 Jaws, in order to, and minute by minute, to see how it changes once you have the background information and the context, the historical context that the Book of Quint provides. It's actually creating quite a neat experience. We have great comments from all over, from all of you over at on our YouTube channel and the Spotify, as well as at the Instagram at Book of Quint. Now that this show has video, it seems that a lot of listeners are congregating at these different platforms. We're spread out all over to make it easier for you to follow along and to best, however you enjoy your podcasting or your videos, you can now find us anywhere all around the world. Even the audio-only version of the show is available there too. So now the comment section is great because because people can chime in with their thoughts in a more interactive experience. Over at Instagram at Book of Quint, that's where all the latest and greatest going on. Yeah, so we've just crossed over 25,000 followers over at the Instagram page at Book of Quint. It seems that's where we are centralized. That's where all the latest news is, where I put the highlight reels of these episodes, maybe a point that I'm trying to make. I throw it up there and it seems to catch fire. The last one where we were talking about the footprints in the sand from minute number 8, that had 22,000 views in the last week and a half. And then very exciting to see, as we know, the Book of Quint it's a bestseller on Audible, Amazon Audible. You can find it on also other platforms, Spotify, Apple, iTunes, Google Books, Google Play Books. Even with the diversification with all those platforms, still Audible is the biggest and baddest audiobook listening community in the world, and we are still a bestseller 10 months and running. We just got up to number 13 in the world for historical thrillers in the top 100 in the world. Number 13, the book reached its highest peak that I've noticed. We could have been higher, but it's hard because this list is updated every so often. And every 15 minutes, I believe, or it updates with the latest numbers. And it was great. We were 2 spots back from a Stephen King book. Another great milestone that we reached here is the audiobook trailer with the great Jonathan Waters doing the voice of Quint. That's on the audiobook. He does 22 different voices. That trailer reached 1 million views on Instagram. And I would be hard-pressed to find another audiobook trailer in the year 2025 to 2026 that has 1 million views on Instagram. And this is so indicative of the passion and the excitement that's behind the Book of Quint and this movement that we're trying to do here. And I believe that would translate so well, is that if you have 1 million views on an audiobook trailer, what would you have for a trailer on the of a potential movie for the silver screen? Just, you can let your imagination run wild with that. It's very exciting to see. That's exciting. Before I forget to mention, I was just on a podcast called Cut and Retie. It's a fishing podcast. It's one of the largest fishing podcasts in the world. The host, Joe, he was just great. He had me on there. He's a big fan of the Book of Quint, and we recorded an episode, and that dropped last week. And it's exciting to see all the new arrivals, all the new eyes on the Jaws obsession. I want to welcome all of you, all the wonderful fishermen from all around the world that were fans of the Cut and Retie podcast. We had a great discussion on the Book of Quint and Jaws and what it means to fishermen all around the world. And I would urge everybody that's listening to the Jaws Obsession, if you want a little bonus episode, go over and listen to episode 170 of the Cut and Retie podcast, and you can hear that interview. I will put the link to that in the description of this broadcast on all the platforms. So you can go and listen to that. It's maybe a little addendum. So we're loading you up here, especially with this Expanded Jaws Universe Minute 9 of this episode 898. This is going to be a very, very interesting episode because we're going to break down some serious mechanics of what's going on with the character of Brody that are lying underneath the surface that we don't normally see, but we're seeing glimpses of it here. And I'm going to try to get to this the best way possible. So this is a very intense episode, and I want to prepare everybody that we're going to really, really get into the root causes of what's going on here, using the clues that we see on screen, and then backing it up with the events and the descriptions in the Book of Quint. So I have all my notes here. Before we get into that, I want to say I finally found documentation. From now on, we can actually say that the prequel to Jaws, the Book of Quint, is actually fulfilling Steven Spielberg's original design, original intent of what he felt, his gut instinct, what Jaws 2 should have been back in 1977. It tipped me on to, I've been looking for this. I've heard about it in a passive way, and I've never really said it on this show because I don't really want to say something unless I have proof or documentation outside. I have theories, but sometimes I want to back up what I'm going to say. If I'm going to get into, I don't want to step on Mr. Spielberg and create false narratives. So I like to usually get quotes or things that come out of interviews or anything like that before I state them on the show. And I always knew, and I always said behind closed doors, that I believe Steven Spielberg wanted to do the Godfather 2 treatment to Jaws as a sequel because he saw the success that if you're going to do a sequel back in the 70s, Godfather 2 was the template. That was it. Godfather 2 had prequel elements combined with current day elements of the young Vito Corleone, with the crossed over with Michael Corleone, what was happening in the current day events of that time. So what happened is you were getting context to the original performance of Marlon Brando in The Godfather. And that is why it's so successful. Some people regard Godfather 2 as even better than the original. So I heard that Steven Spielberg had intentions of doing this as a form for Jaws 2. Now I finally found documented proof, and we're going to cover that right now. This is breaking news. We're going to go to a website called Collider. Collider.com, it's an article. It says, "The Real Reason Why Steven Spielberg Didn't Direct Jaws 2" by Lloyd Farley, published on June 17th, 2025. So this was published right before we landed in Martha's Vineyard. Remember, with the 50th anniversary of Jaws at Amity Week, you'll see that poster that was hung all over Martha's Vineyard. Amity Week 2025 was the 50th anniversary of Jaws celebration. And remember, I had a presentation there. This article came out and it kind of got lost in the weeds. It kind of missed my radar here. And I just discovered it by doing some research. What I want to do is I'm going to read through some of this article here because Lloyd Farley really hits the nail on the head, but he pointed me in the right direction where I could find a published archived material of Spielberg's intention for a Jaws prequel surrounding USS Indianapolis. So let's get into this. The Real Reason Why Steven Spielberg Didn't Direct Jaws 2 by Lloyd Farley. He writes, "Jaws turns 50 this year, a film that spawned the age of the summer blockbuster and one that has made hundreds of questions if it's safe to go back in the water ever since. The golden anniversary of the film has renewed interest not only in the original flawless classic, but in its follow-up sequels as well, each progressively worse than the one before it. In fact, 1987's Jaws: The Revenge was so critically reviled that it ended up killing the franchise outright. As such, 1978's Jaws 2 is the Citizen Kane of sequels, bringing back Roy Scheider's Chief Brody to confront a new shark that has set itself up in the waters off Amity. The film was directed by Jonu Schwartz, who was not the original director associated with the film. That would be John D. Hancock. The one name that isn't associated with Jaws 2 is the director of the first film, Hollywood icon Steven Spielberg, and there's a good reason why. So he goes on to write the production of Jaws ruined Spielberg's return of Jaws for Jaws 2. Okay, so it talks about Jaws was a veritable phenomenon upon release, making millions of dollars. David Brown and Richard Zanuck, producers of the original, stayed on board, as did Scheider. Brown and Zanuck reached out to Spielberg about returning too, but he didn't even respond to their offer. Spielberg felt he already made the definitive shark movie with Jaws. Spoiler, he did, further adding that making a sequel to anything is just a cheap carny trick. Case closed. Not really. Given the director has played cheap carny tricks multiple times since then, helming the first 3 sequels in the Indiana Jones franchise, The Lost World, Jurassic Park, there had to be another reason. Sure enough, there was, and it makes perfect sense. Years later, Spielberg confirmed the real reason why he didn't return. He says, it was a nightmare. Nightmare doesn't even describe the traumatic experience Spielberg had while making Jaws. Filming on the ocean, harder than anticipated. Robert Shaw, Richard Dreyfuss hated each other. Endless problems, things so bad. Experience left Spielberg with post-traumatic stress disorder, and he cited fear of returning to the water as the real reason, saying, I would have done the sequel if I hadn't had such a horrible time at sea on the first film. We have talked about that before, and we have talked about that. And you could see in that recent documentary, Jaws at 50, Spielberg really opens up about the post-traumatic stress that he was suffering from after Jaws, and that he would revisit the orca in order to sort of cathartically get over that or dispel some of those emotions. And that's why he was so disappointed when the orca disappeared, when Universal's ground department decided to just scrap and destroy the orca as a cheap prop while Spielberg was filming Jurassic Park, and he came back to see it missing, and he was very, very upset over that. So we do know about that, but it still gets a little bit deeper. So Lloyd Farley continues on here. He says, Close Encounters of the Third Kind put the nail in the coffin for Spielberg's return for Jaws 2. According to this is the part right here. This is the very, very important here. According to Joseph McBride's Steven Spielberg, a biography, Spielberg didn't fully close the door on a sequel. At this time, it was after, so Jaws is 75, and we're talking about 76 into 77. They had a screenplay, Dorothy Tristan screenplay, and that Hancock was the director, and he was fired. Zanuck and Brown had trouble trying to find another director to take on the project. They didn't agree with the way it was working out, and they didn't like that style of what movie he was trying to make. So they said, okay, so they ended up firing him. And it says, during that time, they received a call from Spielberg, who was in post-production on Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Whether it was a sense of obligation, responsibility, or some other reason, Spielberg offered to take over after hearing the problems they were having, and spent the weekend of July 4th, 1977, working on an idea. Here it is, right here. Ready? He pitched a prequel based on the events of the USS Indianapolis, a dramatization of Robert Shaw's iconic monologue in Jaws. That one sentence right there, okay, and Joseph McBride, Steven Spielberg, a biography, that Steven Spielberg on July 4th, 1977, was working on his own treatment of what Jaws 2 should be, and that he was leaning towards, he pitched a prequel based on events of the USS Indianapolis. It didn't pan out, with Universal unwilling to wait a year for Spielberg to complete the work on Close Encounters of the Third Kind, which likely prompted huge relief from the director, maybe with what the hell was I thinking thrown in for good measure. That did close the door on Spielberg's involvement after rejecting a darker script that had Amity's reputation in ruins. After the first film and Another Shark, they settled on a lighter script, the Jaws 2 we know and don't outright hate. What I like is Lloyd goes on to Lloyd Farley goes on to write here for Collider in the Collider article, it's disappointing to know that the studio was more content to cash in on the success of Jaws rather than wait for Spielberg, but hardly surprising. The idea of a USS Indianapolis-centered prequel, especially with Spielberg behind it, sounds amazing. Different enough that it would have been it wouldn't have been a retread of the same story like Jaws 2 essentially is, but rather one that builds on it. While it's doubtful Spielberg would revisit it, the advancement in technology since then would make it very easy to create the film without ever going near the water. So perhaps there's still hope that Spielberg can restore the legacy of his aquatic masterpiece after all. Let's read that. Listen to that sentence again. So perhaps there's still hope that Spielberg can restore the legacy of his aquatic masterpiece after all. And isn't that what we are doing here on the Jaws Obsession? And isn't that what we have said with all these episodes of the Jaws Obsession for the Book of Quint? We're about restoring the legacy of Jaws, okay? We're expanding the Jaws universe, and that's where with episode 100. We're only 2 episodes away from episode 100, which is going to be the next great step that I'm going to announce, the next plan to get through 2026 and into 2027, because 2027 will be the next step in restoring the legacy of Jaws. We can do that here ourselves because we can stand together as a community of Jaws fans, and I'm just asking everyone that has followed me, that has supported the Book of Quint, to stay with me on this, because there's something very special. I understand it was developed through this whole process over the last many years, and it's very exciting. So from there, I went. So that Collider article, I'm going to put the link up in the description. So if you want to pause on this video, go right down and click on that link and go read that article for yourself. But Steven Spielberg biography by Joseph McBride, I got the 2nd edition here, okay? And what I did was I started reading that. I'm not as far into it. I'm pretty much I'm only like about 170 pages into it. But if you skip ahead and you go, I'm going to read right now. So we're going to have published proof right here on page 258. Okay, Steven Spielberg offered a somewhat different account. Quote, I said I'd spend the July 4th weekend trying to find the solution to a sequel, and that if I could write it, and Zanuck and Brown would push the production to the spring of '78, I'd do it. I spent 3 days at the typewriter and wrote 7 or 8 schematic breakdowns. I kept the Dreyfuss and Scheider characters in it, then finally said to myself, I can't. For me, a sequel becomes a real fish story. I called Sid back, that's Sid Sheinberg, who was the head of Universal at the time, and said I couldn't do it. I decided a sequel would not be an exercise in expanding my own horizons. It would be corporate business. The key sentence here is, for me, the sequel becomes a real fish story. And remember, what we always felt here was Jaws is not a monster shark movie. Jaws is a human movie. And in the documentary Jaws at 50, Spielberg, or it wasn't in the documentary. There was a news segment that I was watching. I think it was Good Morning America. Spielberg was on, and he said that he always saw Jaws as a people movie. Can we find that here? Why can't we find that here? So yeah, I got the interview right here. Let me pull that up here, and I just find this fascinating. That now I want you to listen to what Mr. Spielberg says here when he answers this question here.
Not one to go back and rewatch your movies, but you did recently rewatch Jaws. Yeah. What did you think?
Well, I watched alone. I was kind of fishing for good memories, and I was trying to see, can I watch this movie again and see what the audience sees?
Do you have a favorite scene after rewatching it?
Yeah.
What is it?
It has nothing to do with the shark. Because it's not a shark movie, this is a people movie. And the scene that I love most is the scene where the guys compare scars.
I got something for you.
And then Quint talks about the Indianapolis.
Sometimes that shark, he looks right into you, right into your eyes.
So many movies are remade these days. Mm-hmm. Should Jaws ever be remade?
No. I don't ever want to see Jaws remade. It had its place in time and in history, and now in these halls. And I think remaking something would have really distilled that impact, and we wouldn't be celebrating this today.
See, that's fascinating here.
And then
It's
most
fascinating.
is the scene where the guys compare scars. Because it's not a shark movie, this is a people movie. And the scene that I love most is the scene where the guys compare scars.
I got something for you.
And then Quint talks about the Indianapolis.
Sometimes that shark, he looks right into you. Right into your eyes.
So many movies.
So we have words from director Spielberg right there that his favorite, it's not a shark movie, it's a people movie. And that's what we've been trying to say here for all these years on the Jaws obsession, that this is that there is almost a reformation, that Jaws is not the horror monster shark movie that was almost marketed and pushed for 50 years, is that it's actually a human movie. It's a people movie, as Mr. Spielberg says. And his favorite scene is Robert Shaw talking about the USS Indianapolis. So that being in mind, if we keep that in mind as we go to this next paragraph on page 258 of Steven Spielberg, a biography by Joseph McBride, it says here, according to Joe Alves, Spielberg had produced scrapping the existing script for Jaws 2 and dealing with the mass attack by sharks in 1945 on sailors from the USS Indianapolis. The story recounted by Robert Shaw in Jaws. Howard Sackler, who wrote Jaws 2 with Carl Gottlieb, previously had suggested basing it on the Indianapolis incident, but was overruled by Sid Sheinberg, who said that's a different kind of shirt than what we want to wear. Whether or not Spielberg would have been able to change Sheinberg's mind, it was the director's scheduling demand that proved divisive. We couldn't wait that long, David Brown explained. We had a cast and crew and contracts and a release date. So Universal reapproached Verna Fields, but the Directors Guild of America would not give her a waiver to direct the film, so the job went to Jean Schwartz, and Jaws 2 went down as we know it. So we have published proof here. Spielberg's original intention, his original desire for Jaws 2 was a prequel around that had elements of the USS Indianapolis tragedy, showing a young Quint, and how exciting is it that even though it didn't happen at that time, that here we are with a best-selling audiobook, a best-selling novel, The Book of Quint, and we are now fulfilling Mr. Spielberg's actual dreams or actual vision from 1977. So in 2027, it's going to be 50 years of what those instincts were, and could those be realized now? This is a very exciting time, and this was a very exciting find, because what I've been wanting to say for the longest time, but I did not have published proof. I wanted to say that the Book of Quint here is within the mindset of Steven Spielberg, the director of Jaws. And that kind of takes some of the resistance away that lifelong Jaws fans might have when they encounter the Book of Quint, or they see what I've been trying to do here. That the Book of Quint was written in the stars. I just truly believe that this is what needed to happen. The story was always there, and it does improve Jaws. It makes Jaws into a historical fiction movie. That's what essentially Jaws is. When Howard Sackler introduced the Indianapolis segment, Jaws became historical fiction. And that is just so exciting. And that's the one I've always leaned on that. And I think Steven Spielberg when he saw that performed by Robert Shaw, that started the mechanics going. And that's where a proper sequel should have been, was with prequel elements. And so here we are 50 years later, and it's going to be 50 years in 2027 that Spielberg had the original vision of Jaws 2 being a prequel. And now we have the Book of Quint fulfilling that vision. It's just extremely exciting. And I want to thank Lloyd Farley over at Collider for writing that article and tipping me off to this Steven Spielberg, a biography by Joseph McBride. It's a gigantic book, and I'm going through it page by page, but I skipped ahead and I was able to find these passages where it mentions Howard Sackler and it mentions Joe Alves, and Joe Alves confirming that Spielberg originally wanted a prequel around the USS Indianapolis. Very exciting. So here we are. We can say that now that that a prequel to Jaws was that we have proof. It is Steven Spielberg's original vision, and isn't that exciting? That after his next movie comes out in this summer, is it possible that we could get him to comment on the Book of Quint? Who knows? But that's what we're going to keep going here. We're going to keep going forward on this, because if you are part of the Jaws Obsession community, you out there, if you are watching or listening to this episode, you are the most well-versed and you have some of the highest knowledge about this movie, Jaws, than any other fans out there who haven't yet come to see the Jaws Obsession or read the Book of Quint, because you are seeing things, as you're going to see in this minute number 9, on a whole other level. So you're seeing things with another round of insight. And it's amazing. And it's just an amazing time to be alive here. If you are a Jaws fan, it's an amazing time to watch this movie. And it's just so exciting to be here. So I just find it amazing. I'm just having a ball, and it's exciting. So I'm glad I was able to lead off with this. Thank you for letting us talk about this, and even playing that segment, NBC News segment, that interview with Steven Spielberg from the Academy of Motion Pictures Arts and Science at their Jaws exhibit, which I will be going to later next month. In the end of February, I will be attending that Jaws exhibit. It's going to be exciting. I'm going to take video, and we're going to have pictures, and I'm going to be able to share my experience there with all of you. But I will be headed over there at the end of February with my family, see the Bruce Shark, see the rebuilt Bruce Shark. It's going to be proper next step in this journey and in the research that I'm doing into Jaws. But as I'm going to be going forward, as you see with episode 100, is going to be as monumental of an episode as episode 20 was, if you've been following along for this whole time. If you haven't, I'm glad you're here now. And remember, you do not have to listen or watch these episodes in succession. Don't feel pressure that you have to go all the way back to number 1 and then come forward. That's all history now, and that's good. That's all archived, and we can get to that at our own leisure. If you want to really catch up, I think you should just start at minute 0, which would have been, minute 0 would have been episode 87. So if you start at episode 87 and you come up to now, which is 98, then you're pretty much well caught up with what we're doing here and how we're going and where we're going to go going forward, because we have a lot of episodes to get to. Jaws is 123 minutes long, and we're only on minute number 9. Am I going to get through the whole next episode, the whole movie in the next year? Absolutely not, because I have a big thing going on here that I'm trying to work out, which is going to be I'm going to kind of steer the ship towards 2027 in a way that I never thought was possible. And we are going to do some amazing things, but we can only do them if we stay together. And that's what this is all about. Everybody coming in, watching Jaws, having fun, and learning about these characters, but staying together is what and that's what we're doing. This platform, it's creating something that the world has never seen. Any other fans of any movie, they're so fractured. There's so many of them. If you want to talk about Star Trek or Star Wars, yes, those are bigger IPs, but a central hub of an area where we're talking about expanding that universe is so exciting. That's what the Jaws Obsession is giving us. And we are with 1 million views on an audiobook trailer. That is just groundbreaking. And I couldn't have done it without all of you. So I want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart for everyone out there that's either listening or watching at this moment. So important. 1 million views on that audiobook trailer. That definitely gets their attention for the powers that be, that the Book of Quint is the way to go forward. We are protecting Jaws. I meant that when you watch the Cut and Retie podcast, that interview, I talked about protecting Jaws with the Book of Quint. We are doing something that I believe a lot of other fandoms wish they had. They wish they had that type of protection going forward with a novel. Remember, it's all about the power of a book. The power of the novel is extremely important. And I think going forward, there's a lot of these studios, and they're it's like gambling. They are taking on they're betting on that racehorse, and they're hoping that it runs around the track and it gets all the way. But with a novel, you actually have that. You have the fans already well versed on what to expect. They're excited. The anticipation's there. So interesting, and it's what director Spielberg has found a lot of success. 10 movies of his have been prior published novels. If you want to talk about Jaws, Jurassic Park, Lost World, Color Purple, all the way up to even a Ready Player One, that they were published novels before, and they're actually seeing success now. Amblin is with Hamnet, winning in the Golden Globes, and it's getting critically acclaimed, and that was a published novel as well. So this is the way going forward, I believe, in today's day and age, when it's such a gamble on whether these productions will be financial successes and if they will find their audience. But to have a pre-published novel that actually is getting good ratings and good reviews, it's a bestseller. This is all important, and I couldn't have done it without all of you. So thank you very much. Exciting times are ahead. Let's push on. Episode 98. Here we go with minute number 9. In order to understand minute number 9, there's a revelation that comes in that many have thought was a continuity error, that it was a mistake for the longest time. And that is the incorrect way of looking at this minute. This minute number 9 is very, very important to the characterization of Martin Brody, but also into the ticket going forward, going into the expanded Jaws universe, that we're going to talk about more with episode 100, but actually what we're going to be doing in the future. So that we have to look at clues that tell us the story of these characters, but also sometimes these are not resolved in Jaws. That you have to feed that into Jaws 2 to get more of a understanding of what's going on. But one of the three main aspects that I have here that I have written down is the understanding is all about finding the right perspective to watching the movie and watching this minute number 9. Number 1 is the history of the Amity Police Department as described in the Book of Quint. It's very, very important to understand the history of the Amity Police Department. It's very briefly touched on in the Book of Quint, and I'm going to read that in a second here. And then we're going to get into number 2. The character of Chief Brody was quite more involved, and he was more in depth in the novel. That he was a deeper character in the novel Jaws by Peter Benchley, and those traits seem to have been held over into the production, not just from evidence in the screenplay, but also into this production. And then number 3 is the mindset of Steven Spielberg during filming. Is we have to look at exactly what were they doing behind the scenes on set at this time. And I'm very, when you add all that up, this is not the continuity error that people think it is. And that's why we are establishing the certain aspects here. So before we get into the minute breakdown, let's go over these 3 topics. Well, number 1, we're going to go into the Book of Quint. If everybody has their Book of Quint and they flip to, let's see here, this is in chapter 42, page 302, okay? We need to go into the history of the chief on Amity Island, okay? Now, it's only briefly described in the Book of Quint on page 302. Remember, this is coming from the viewpoint of Herschel. He says, the 5 selectmen all established businesses around the island and made out like bandits. One had hotels, another had a bicycle rental business, which later turned into car sales. Monopoly of grocery stores and gas stations was owned by another. Vaughn had the property and land holdings. The last guy had the waterfront docks and shipping contracts. All of them became millionaires. They owed it all to Vaughn and would do whatever he asked. They were the law. In that paragraph, it describes how the selectmen were the real law of the island. And then it says the police from Nantucket sent over summer deputies to keep an office in town. The Amity Police Department was a part-time hustle, 2 police cars and a phone. Nobody came here for trouble, so it was the duty a monkey could do. Just sit in the office and answer complaints about cars double parked and kids lighting bonfires on the beach. That's really all that is included in that historical context, is that what I wanted to establish, it needed to be published somehow. It had to be in some sort of published work in order for us to kind of blend this in so it could be canon, was that we see in Jaws, we see that these comments that this is your first summer. We bought the house in the fall. This is summer. So we've already established in prior minutes that the Brodys are brand new to the island. Those are in these prior EJU episodes. So we know that he's new to the island. And what I wanted to do was I wanted to talk about that my influence into how I approached Amity was reflected on it was reflective of my time spent when I first got into the Coast Guard. I was stationed on a small boat station Fire Island, which is on the south shore of Long Island. And if you look on Fire Island, you have let's see, can we pull up a map here? Okay, so here we are. We have a quick map of Long Island. If everyone knows, this is where Manhattan is. This is New York City area, and then Long Island comes out. And what we have is we have the Hamptons. And if you go on the Great South Bay down here, this is actually Fire Island. It was a very long, thin island, and it's isolated. It's not. There's a Robert Moses Causeway comes over here and goes into Babylon, and then you don't really have any other bridges that connect this. You have this Fire Island Inlet right here, and then goes down to Jones Beach up here in West Hamptons. You have you go up into Moriches. And then, of course, Montauk, way at the end here, is Station Montauk. So you have Coast Guard stations at Jones Beach. You have one at Fire Island. Then you have Group Moriches. And then you have the Shinnecock, Station Shinnecock. And then you have station over in Montauk. So you have all these Coast Guard stations lining up. I was stationed on Fire Island. So this was our area of responsibility. It was the Great South Bay. It was the Great South Bay here, and the ocean. That's the ocean side of it as well as inside. So you have to realize that on Fire Island, right down here, there was all these little towns. There's Kismet, Fair Harbor, Dune Haven, all these different ones. Then you have the Fire Island Pines, Cherry Grove. You have all these different little towns that are on Fire Island that you can only get to by boat. So and also the road was not connected to Fire Island, to the main road that comes here from the Robert Moses Causeway that comes across. So what happened is that you have these towns, they're literal towns that are isolated from the mainland, and they don't have full-time services. They don't have a full-time police officer. What they would do was Suffolk County would have a Suffolk County Marine Bureau where these Suffolk County sheriffs that would come over on trucks, either Ford Broncos or they were Chevy Blazers, just like Martin Brody has, and they would say hi to us at this Coast Guard station, and then they would drive on the beach all the way down to get to the first town, and then those towns were all connected by one road that comes down this island. So what I modeled Amity Island as in the Book of Quint was, in essence, what the police officer and they called them constables, which were, they didn't necessarily belong to this town, whether you were in Kismet or Fairhaven. You actually would, if you had needed a police officer, they would send a constable, a Suffolk County Marine Bureau, Marine Bureau sheriff, that would be in a 4x4 truck that would come across the bridge, and then he would drive on the beach and he'd get all the way down to you. And that's when he would be a peacekeeper of sorts. And so that's how I predicted what early Amity Island was like. Early Amity Island was like Fire Island in that it was isolated from the mainland, but you did not have a full-time sheriff. You did not have a police force because the towns are so small. There's only one store, and then there really isn't any, there's most of the houses get boarded up during the winter time. In the summertime, they get opened up, but you can only get to these from boat. So the population booms in the summertime when people come over to have parties or to go fishing or to go on the beach and vacation. But then in the wintertime, they all go back to the mainland and these all get boarded up. Some people stay year round, but it's very, very hard because if you can't get back to the mainland, you have to actually come across the beach. There was a sand trail where you could drive on in order to get to the main road and then go back into town. So it was a very, very rough life on Fire Island in the past if you stayed there year round. And so that's how I pictured Amity Island in that this was the Amity Island Police Department was never really a full-time police department. It was a part-time deal where in the summertime they would bring constables over from the mainland. So if we go to the map of Amity Island that you'll actually see in the Book of Quint, the wider map that shows the positioning of the three islands. So that's where what I drew up from these passages in the Book of Quint is that Nantucket would be the closer island. So they would send over a constable if there was any serious police business that needed working, or in the summertime, they would send over 2 part-time deputies that would come over in the days, handle the whatever needs to be handled and various reports, and then go back to where they lived on Nantucket. Or to the mainland. But the thing is that Amity Island it's an isolated island, and that when we see in Jaws is that the population has gotten to where Mayor Vaughn has grown the population so much in order to get state funding and state aid from the state of Massachusetts, that they would actually need to establish a full-time police force and hire a chief of police. That is the best way I can describe in the movie Jaws, how they never talk about the other guy. Things were done by the prior chief. They never talk about the chief of police from before. In fact, what you see Martin Brody, he's talking about the old forms. He's talking about a new filing system he's trying to bring into fruition. So that's what I always felt was that he is coming on. He was hired by the selectmen in order to be the first chief of police and establish a full-time police force. And Deputy Hendricks is now the night deputy that we covered in the last one. Is that he's the other full-time policeman that's allocated to the new Amity Police Department. They obviously have a full-time secretary now that she's not just part-time. So that's what's really interesting here is we're watching the birth of the Amity Police Department according to the Book of Quint. And that's one of the things that I wanted to get on the record with the Book of Quint was that we can better understand Martin Brody, but we also can understand how the selectmen and Mayor Vaughn are very standoffish with Brody as chief of police, as in, how is he going to come in here on his first summer and shut the beaches down? You're going to need an order by a board of selectmen, and that's what's happening here. So I really do. I find that interesting, and that's one of the things that we had to set up when writing the Book of Quint is that I was always laying groundwork in order to better understand Jaws. So that passage right there and what I just described to you is that this is the first summer with the Book of Quint. Now, this proves that that's the first summer for the Amity PD that Martin Brody is the first chief of police. Now, this is going to cover because the movie breaks from the novelization of Jaws in that instead of being its own island, that Amity Island was just a town on Long Island. Okay, let's pull that back up here. So this is Long Island and Amity Island. There is an Amity down here in Suffolk County, Amityville, I should say. There's an Amityville, which that's where the house is from Amityville Horror, and that was in one of these neighborhoods down here. But if I can remember correctly in the book Jaws, Amity was sort of on the North Shore. It's up here, so this is where Amity Island would be, and this is the North Shore where the town of Amity was, according to Peter Benchley. And that's why it's not like that in the book. It actually goes to Amity Island. It's its own island in the movie. So it's not in the book, it's a town on Long Island. Here, we get rid of the town on Long Island, and now we go to its own island in the film Jaws. And that's where this map on the Book of Quint is very, very, very important to understand the logistics, to understand the predicament that Martin Brody finds himself in. It's even in 1974, it's still a building island. This is an outlier island that's just getting its township. It's just getting this full-time police department. So things have a chance. That's why there's a lot of things going on in his mind, and things have a chance to go a lot haywire really fast when the shark comes around. So that's what we have to differentiate. However, if we are going to go into the novel Jaws, okay, by Peter Benchley, what we have to understand is, what is the character of Chief Brody? So Chief Brody in the book, in Jaws, is maybe somewhat into Peter Benchley's screenplay, is not the most morally pure of characters. He is somewhat compromised integrity-wise. I think some of what we watch when we watch Jaws, it's always been for 50 years, we've understood that Brody represents the common man, the everyday man. But you don't get in the position that he's in without being able to, as J.T. Walsh says, for a few good men, sidestepping a few landmines. That you have to be able to navigate problems and actually solve them at working with the town, working with the politicians. And I don't think Chief Brody, as a detective, was any stranger to that. I think part of us, when we watch this, we come to Chief Brody as in that he's sort of a fish out of water. He is a babe in the woods. He's kind of aloof. And in many ways, as we're going to see in this minute, he's forgetting things. It's already established with this shoulder towel that we're going to be talking about, but and we've talked about in prior minutes. But what is happening is that I want to show you in certain select passages from Jaws by Peter Benchley just exactly who Chief Brody was at the time when they were making this movie. This is the understanding they had of the character. If we go to chapter 3, page 26 and 27, when Chief Brody is talking to the coroner, he says, the coroner says, "Sorry, Martin. Anyway, I'm going to put down shark attack. I'd say that makes the most sense for you, too, unless there are, other considerations." And it says, the possibility, on page 27, the possibility that other considerations might be involved in the case hadn't occurred to Brody. Those considerations were the touchiest part of Brody's job, forcing him constantly to assess the best means of protecting the common weal without compromising either himself or the law. So protecting the common weal, which means well-being, prosperity, and happiness. So protecting the well-being and prosperity of the community, that he had to constantly assess the best means to protecting the well-being and prosperity without compromising either himself or the law. Then he goes on in page 28. It goes on to talk about how Martin Brody in the past. Now remember, Martin Brody was a chief of police for a few years, quite a long time on Amity in Jaws. Here in the movie, he's new. So this is his first summer. But it says in Jaws, and then there was a common, though tacit, understanding in Amity, born of the need to survive. Everyone was expected to do his bit to make sure that Amity remained a desirable summer community. But tacit means an understanding without openly being expressed. So there was an implied or silent understanding that anyone in Amity had to do their part to make sure that Amity remained a desirable summer community. Okay? Now, if you go over to page 29, Generally, Brody's contribution to the Amity understanding, in addition to maintaining the rule of law and sound judgment in town, consisted of suppressing rumors. So Brody's contribution to the Amity understanding, that means to make sure that Amity was a desirable community, consisted of suppressing rumors. Okay, Peter Benchley wrote that. And it goes on, in consultation with Harry Meadows. Harry Meadows is the reporter played by Carl Gottlieb in the film. And we're going to get to this. That he's the editor of the Amity Leader in the movie. I believe it's called the Amity Gazette. Keeping a certain perspective on the rare, unfortunate occurrences that qualify as news. So keeping a certain perspective on the rare, unfortunate occurrences that qualify as news. So then it goes on to describe on page 30 and 31 just what Brody and Meadows would do together and how they would Brody would not report or would not file a police report, or he would, but Harry Meadows would take the story and he would state it in another way, or Brody would hold back and Meadows would then file the story in order to publicly shame people. So there was already a preconceived idea that Brody would work with Meadows, or he was taking influence or advice from Meadows in order to how best establish this story or how to handle a problem that showed up. Okay, this is in the Jaws novel, remember. Now, if we go over to page 40, okay, page 40 is a very important part in the novel Jaws. It says, when he's talking to Harry Meadows, and Brody says, it's already classified as a shark attack, I want to close the beaches. He says, figures, well, Harry, where does that leave us? You're not going to run a story, so as far as the good readers of the Leader are concerned, nothing ever happened. I'm going to close the beaches and put up a few signs saying why. And Harry responds and he says, okay, Martin, that's your decision, but let me remind you of something. You are an elected official. And Brody says, just like the president for 4 thrill-filled years. And Harry says, elected officials can be impeached. And he said, is that a threat, Harry? So in the novel Jaws, we know, we understand that Chief Brody is an elected position. Okay, so he has to run for re-election in 4 years. So in 1974, this is his first year of being hired by the selectmen. It's not that he had to win an election. He just gets hired in 73. 74 is his first year, so he's going to have to run for re-election in 1977 or 78 or wherever, however it's written up in their rules. So what's interesting is that Martin is also considering, he's going to be considering re-election. Now remember, we are at a point in Jaws where there's no talk of shark attack, okay? Even though you found the remains of Chrissie Watkins, we have to somewhat assume that it was implied by Brody that he understood what could have caused this. But so far, there's no talk of shark attack as he's sitting at this typewriter right now, okay? We're doing this because we want to understand this minute. I want to go to, remember, elected official. And then the final point that I want to read about here is Mayor Vaughn on page 45 in Jaws by Peter Benchley. Mayor Vaughn describes Chrissie Watkins. He says, we do have this one thing going for us. Miss Watkins was a nobody. She was a drifter. No family, no close friends. She said she had hitchhiked east from Idaho, so she won't be missed. Now, that's from Jaws by Peter Benchley. Now, we have Mayor Vaughn in the novel was saying that she was a drifter. She won't be missed. She hitchhiked from Idaho. In my version of Chrissie Watkins that I'm seeing in the movie, in the film version of Chrissie Watkins, I don't see someone from Idaho swimming that well. It seems like she was a good swimmer and she was from the local area. We pointed out that Chrissie has the purse that was from the Wampano tribe. that she is locally, she has been in that area before. So I believe that that she's not there from that far away, like Idaho, which is on the other side of the country. So one thing that's true that we're going to get to a little bit later here is that Chrissie Watkins was kept anonymous, and that it was better for them if her name was not revealed, if she is just a summer girl, if she's just mentioned as a girl, if there is no name attached to the initial findings of that we found the remains of a girl on the beach. If you don't have anything if you don't have a name or an identity, you don't have anything to report as of yet. So therefore, you can't go national, and national news won't pick it up, and the official apparatus that the paper trail doesn't really start is that you still have to establish the identity. We have to keep that in mind here because it's easier for them to control the narrative if they do not have an identity right away, okay? Now, if you factor all of that in that I've just read about the novel version of Chief Brody, if you factor that could have been a mindset that carried on to the set when we talk about the third aspect, which is the mindset of Steven Spielberg during filming, and the mindset of how he brought in other writers like Howard Sackler to break down the Benchley treatment, the Benchley script, and then he had Carl Gottlieb on set, where they were constantly reworking this narrative and the dialogue. But also, there's one photo here, and I'm going to bring this up. It's a good time to bring this up here. There's this photo that I can never find the original photo of, but this is the one that I have. It's from Getty Images, so there's a watermark over it. But for our purposes, this is what I wanted. This is actually from on the set, from inside the police station, which was the production headquarters for Jaws on Martha's Vineyard. That's what doubled as the Amity Police Station. And you'll see this doorway, and there's the camera. We have the 35 millimeter camera, the Panavision lens, and all that. And then, so this is the camera that's going to dolly forward and follow Polly as she walks in, and Chief is going to be sitting at the desk. But here's Steven Spielberg, director Spielberg, talking to Roy Scheider. You can see Roy has a copy of the script. And what it looks like, and this is at a time, if you look at the mindset of Steven Spielberg, is that the shark was not working. There was a lot of stuff going on. Also, the weather patterns were changing. There was a lot of things that they could not do, so they couldn't shoot. So they would always do the inside work first. So as he's doing the inside, there could have been many times that he's thinking outside of the box, trying to establish a characterization of Brody, trying to give him motivations, but also trying to create side narratives just to keep things interesting, these mundane moments of the police of Chief Brody getting the call from the coroner, and all these things that play into the building the intensity up without actually having a monster shark to show. He's going to be using all these little factors. And I'm thinking that what it looks like is that Steven Spielberg was constantly pushing these little things, the shoulder towel. We're going to see these little things come up here that give nonverbal ways of saying Martin Brody is a complex character. He's not just some simple Simon guy. He's not some guy he's going to find out that he's in over his head because he doesn't like the water and he's on an island, but he still was a detective in New York City. He still had a complexity coming forward, how he can handle and maneuver politicians, reporters, and things outright, maybe public outcry. There's a lot of little things that have to be done, and you can see that Martin Brody would be one of those guys that the selectmen would have zeroed in on and said, yes, this guy can play ball. He can work with us in what we're trying to do. And Steven Spielberg and Roy Scheider are working this out. So these are things that are not in the screenplay. Like Polly never says in the screenplay, wow, you're here awful early. Is the chief in there? That's not in the screenplay. That was just made up on the spot as a way of, I don't know if that was Spielberg and the actress Peggy Scott creating that dialogue and that back and forth, but it's not, that dialogue is not in there. There's no mention of a shoulder towel. There are things that are involved in Jaws that are not pre-written. They were just made up on the spot. And I think what we're going to see here, the events that play out, are that came up using this understanding that Brody kind of works with Meadows, the reporter, in order to smooth things over, in order to keep things on an even keel. And that he already was doing this even before Shark Attack, even before Mayor Vaughn, you can't close the beaches. There was already some sort of a backroom dealing going on, how to handle a missing girl being found dead on the beach. That's what we have to really drill down on here, is that there was already something going on in a way of not letting the public know too much too soon at this time in the Amity Police Station. So we got to keep that in mind, that there is an arc for Chief Brody. And this arc is kind of left incomplete at the end of Jaws. And then it picks up in Jaws 2, because miraculously, Jaws 2, when Carl Gottlieb came in and did those corrections, he created this arc for Chief Brody. That Chief Brody isn't some squeaky clean guy that something bad happens, he doesn't close the beach, and then he wants to, prove everybody wrong. No, we're actually starting with Chief Brody already in an area where he's manufacturing ways of persuading the public, or of keeping the news out of the news, so to speak. Or he gets more wrapped up into it as the Alex Kittner death happens. And then at the end of Jaws, and then as we see in Jaws 2, everybody's back to normal. The beaches are hustling and bustling. The mayor's reelected, and Chief Brody is still the chief of police with a larger police force, with more resources. And Ellen Brody has a job with the local developer. So you can see there's things going on that Chief Brody is not. He's a very complex character, and he was never given that closure at the end of Jaws 2, that hero's return, so to speak, that it almost was too much on the face value of watching Jaws 2, that there is more guilt going on behind Chief Brody and the decisions he makes in Jaws that go into Jaws 2, that there warrants more telling of what would have happened after Jaws 2. And unfortunately, 3 and 4 never really tackled that. So we're going to talk about that in episode 100. Is there a way of actually correcting this? But that's why this minute number 8 here, that's why this minute number 9 here is so very important in order for us to understand what Roy Scheider is playing a much more complex character than what we might realize. So we're going to go through this, but I'm also going to be jumping around. I might go to some other minutes and then come back, because this is very important to take our time and to sit on this scene a little bit, because I've been working on this for there was a few episodes. We've already touched on a lot of this, and we are going to definitively call it of what's really going on here. And it's very important. It's very important for the expanded Jaws universe and this goal that we're going to be restating in episode 100 and going forward. By the time we get to 2027, remember this minute establishes some really cool, some very, very neat context into the character of Chief Brody. Okay, the next step here is we need to get a timestamp. Let's bring our Jaws expanded universe timeline up here. Okay, and this is a running tally that we're going to keep going through this whole series here, the EJU series, and we already know that we've established Friday, June 27th, 1974. So we have these times going here. 5:08 a.m. is the Chrissie attack. We have 6:30 a.m. Brody is up, waking up. 7:47 because we had the clock that he wakes up. He gets the call from Hendricks. Then he's down here. 8:35 a.m. is right around that time is the drive over there to meet Cassidy. Then they find the body of Chrissie Watkins on the beach. 8:35 a.m. So now we have to think, what would have happened in there? I remember in the Jaws novel that he says it took over an hour for the coroner and the medical examiner vehicle to get there. There's going to be a collection process of the remains of Chrissie Watkins. There's going to be photographs to be taken, and then they are going to bring all of them are going to return back to the police to the town of Amity. The coroner is going to take the remains to the coroner's office, which I find interesting. Is the coroner is also at the funeral home as well. That's where the medical examiner is. That's where his office is also the same as the funeral home for Amity Island, and we call him Dr. Nevin, and Dr. Nevin is our coroner in the Book of Quint, and I did that because the Dr. Nevin is the real life Dr. Nevin it was the doctor in Eggertown that played that is the doctor we see in Jaws. So we have to think that what I did was if it's 8:35 a.m. is the discovery of the remains, all of that has to be done. I'm going to give them about a good 3 hours to get back into the office, almost 3 hours. So by the time we see Brody's at the typewriter, he's already typed a bunch on the forms. So maybe not even a good 3 hours. I would have to say we're giving them about 2.5 hours to get back. And then he's been at the typewriter for about 20 minutes, 15 minutes. He had that before when Peggy shows up. Peggy Scott, when Polly shows up. So Polly is Secretary Polly. Let's talk about her. Is that I just don't think she's showing up we've already established she's not showing up in the morning. She starts on an 8 to 4 or 9 to 5 schedule. Let's just say she starts at 8 o'clock in the morning. This is her getting back from with her stenographer notepad. Is that she went out to go talk to some of these people. She had some phone calls already, which we're going to see about the karate and the picket fences. But she also has taken already a bunch of calls from the fire chief about the top where the fireworks going to be on the 4th of July for the fire inspector. And what's interesting is that this has been her coming back from either her lunch break or coming back because she had to go check on something. She's already has her pen and notepad in her hand, and that wouldn't be how she comes in to work in the morning at 8 o'clock. So this is her coming back in at 11:10 a.m. It's a nice round figure. It just seems right that it's going to take them 9:35 for the coroner to get out there, and then another half hour to collect everything, take photos, and and then or like 9:35, half hour, 10:05, and then wrapping everything up. And then putting Cassie in the vehicle and then getting everybody back in. It just seems like that's a good time to get back into this office. Would be 11:10 a.m. I felt that noon, like 12:10 a.m. would have been too long. Because remember, we're talking about a smaller island. Everything is closer, but also they're trying to expedite things. I believe that Meadows, the reporter, was already out to the beach when the coroner got the call. When Dr. Nevin got the call, he would have called Meadows because they are closer than Meadows and is with Chief Brody. Chief Brody's brand new. So something happened where there was a discussion. There was some sort of discussion at this time between 8:35 a.m. and 11:10 a.m. The chief that we see here is already involved in something in his head that he was not here. So something happened where Meadows would have talked to him and said, listen, this is what's happening. I can keep this out of the paper if we don't go with if we don't report her identity, if we keep her as a Jane Doe. Okay? If we keep her as a Jane Doe. Let's look that up really quick here. Okay, for some of us that might not know, the Jane Doe definition here. When I say Jane Doe, it's in law, it's an anonymous female party, typically the plaintiff in a legal action. So they'll say the woman, which is Jane Doe, which is really kind of the anonymous name you would put on a woman if you don't want her identity to be known, all right, who is a party to legal proceedings or his true name is unknown or withheld. Where the true name is unknown or withheld, okay? That's very important. Jane Doe would be used if you want the name withheld. So remember, what's going on here is not necessarily what's officially going to be reported, because Meadows says that we don't have to report it nationally, or we don't have to report it in the paper. If the name is withheld, it will have less impact. So I think those discussions went on here, and before we get back to the Amity Island, before we get to back to the Amity police station. So remember that. We're just going to be, remember the 11:10 a.m. on Friday, June 27th, 1974. This is as irrefutable as we can make it as it stands now, as we're watching Jaws in the expanded Jaws universe timeline, factoring the Book of Quint, but also just factoring in these minutes of Jaws. He has to be June 27th. Okay. I'm not going to say why we're on, right? If we recap the whole thing, Alex Kintner, we know is killed on Sunday, June 29th because of the posters. So we know these things. There's certain facts. There's no way that they can be in July. There's no way they can be after June 29th. Right now, it's Friday, June 27th. Okay. That's very, very important. And that's what we established coming up till now. So that's what's going to lead us into this 9th minute here.
System is going to work.
Oh, you're up awful early. Is the chief in there? Well, chief, what have you got on?
Polly.
Okay, so what we have is we have Martin Brody at the typewriter, and he's wearing the shoulder towel. If anyone wants to know, episode 8 of the Jaws Obsession, and then episode 95 of the Jaws Obsession, we kind of broke this whole thing down, and a listener chimed in with some valuable piece of advice that it's Brody, it shows that the shoulder towel was a device to show that Brody is very forgetful, that sometimes he forgets that he has something on, and he's moving too fast, faster than, and he's forgetting things. So because he's preoccupied. We also have to realize that in this scene, when she first walks in here, is if we can all remember, what does Ellen Brody say to Chief before he leaves and gets into his vehicle when he's leaving the house? Yes, you got it. She says, "I want my cup back." So let's play that too.
I want my cup back.
You'll get it.
The cup she's referring to is the one that's in his hand right here. If you can see him carrying it, okay, there's the cup. It's in his hand, okay? It has like a lighter rim on the top, and he's holding it.
Be careful, will you?
In this town? Hey.
Okay, we don't really get a good clear shot of the cup, but she does say, as in, and this was why and also when she was doing it, she was pulling the towel out of his jacket. He put the jacket on with the towel.
Listen, Chief, be careful, will you?
In this town?
So she's pulling the towel out of his jacket that he forgot. And then he's taking her cup away. And then she says,
I want my cup back.
You'll get it.
okay, so I want my cup back. You'll get it. So let's fast forward to the 9th minute here.
You're up awful early. Is the chief in there?
Now everybody look on the ledge here. There, right there.
Well, chief.
Now you have a cup here. Now, is this the same cup, or is this a prior cup? Did Ellen say, "I want my cup back because the last one the last 3 you've left at the station"? And he says, "You'll get it." Now, what I find interesting is that here is a coffee cup left on the ledge right here. Nothing is happenstance. Nothing is a coincidence. Is that this is director Spielberg and the set designer placed this cup here at the same time. So she says, "I want my cup back," and here's a cup sitting there, and he's got the shoulder towel back. He's got a towel back on, and even Peggy, even Polly says, "What have you got on?"
Well, chief, what have you got on?
So we go from, I really think there's more deliberate framing in Spielberg's framing here, that he goes from coffee cup to shoulder towel, just in the way that we saw when Brody was leaving his house. Coffee cup, shoulder towel, forgetting about things. See, watch how he holds this coffee cup stays right in frame.
What have you got on?
Then our eye goes right to the shoulder towel. All deliberately done by director Steven Spielberg, because what he's telegraphing here is that Martin Brody is very forgetful, is that he's forgetting things. He is already flustered. It's telegraphing a mindset without stating it, okay? That he is preoccupied. He goes right into talking about how if this new filing system is going to work, we have to keep the outdated stuff off my desk, just the pending.
The filing system is going to work. You've got to keep that outdated stuff off my desk, just the pending, all right?
Yes, Chief.
Okay. That right there is very interesting, is that it proves that he's using his new Amity Police Department. The permanent Amity Police Department is being established, and he's created a new filing system. He's trying to do things the best there is. Now, if you look down here, we're going to see a cup of Alka-Seltzer water that's untouched. I love that. I love the fact that it's untouched, because he's already dealt with dead bodies before, and it doesn't affect him like it does Hendricks and Cassidy that we saw at the end of the 8th minute, that they are more sick to their stomach. Cassidy looks like he's seen a ghost. Hendricks is dropping multiple tablets of Alka-Seltzer in. It looks like he's worn out. And you have Chief of Police, Martin Brody, who's experienced from New York City. This is not affecting him that much. So even though he does have the Alka-Seltzer water there, he's not touched it because his stomach is not being affected. He has more adrenaline going through his body. It also lets him know that he's thinking about something already. He's preoccupied with something that's going in his mind. And so he's not thinking about a sick or upset stomach. He doesn't have time for that. Why is there a towel on his shoulder? We have talked about that before. Those were in the prior episodes. We're not going to get into that. My theory is that he was using this with Old Spice on it in the way that he does later on when he's chumming for sharks. He's got the towel with the Old Spice over his shoulder from there. Also, there was a photo from the great book Memories from Martha's Vineyard by Matt Taylor, and I want to put this photo up again here. So there's a photo here that was in the book, and it's a publicity shot, but it shows Roy Scheider as Martin Brody at the typewriter, and the towel that he has is a white towel. It's a thicker towel. And I just think that when Steven Spielberg and Roy Scheider were talking about this scene, they had a lot more time than usual to work on this scene, because whether the shark was broken or if the weather was uncooperative, but they had a lot more time to dissect the character of Martin Brody and add in elements to telegraph to the audience, or even for Scheider to feel the character of Martin Brody, that he's fighting against the wind here, but he's also forgetting things. And this is the first towel that was used. It was probably deemed too distracting, maybe too bright for the film, and so they went with the orange and towel with the yellow trim or the yellow backside. So it's an orange and yellow two-tone towel there, and that was switched out. So it's not the white towel that we saw in that publicity photo, but because there was a different towel, that means that this was an active discussion, that they decided on what towel to use, because Brody's going to keep this towel for the next few minutes. For the next 5 to 6 minutes of movie, he's going to have this towel on him because he's going to forget about it when he puts his jacket on. That tells me that everything you see in this, what does the coffee cup tell you on the ledge? What does the shoulder towel tell you? Everything you see here is deliberate. There are no coincidences. There are no mistakes that are going to come up here. These are deliberate, and it's up to us as fans of Jaws to figure out why. And that's what's so exciting here. We're on the cutting edge of something, and there's a bigger story here. What else are we going to look at here? We're going to look at on the desk here. We're going to see as if we're going to, maybe I'll blow this up and show, we're going to see there's a Dixie cup, like a cup of coffee here, okay? That would be something that he forgot where he put Ellen's cup again for maybe the second or third time. He's only been there for a week. So maybe this is the second or third time he's forgot where maybe there's coffee cups everywhere in the Blazer or in the Amity police, the police office in the Amity police station here. So there might be Ellen cups everywhere. And now he forgot where he put that one over the fireplace. So now he's got the Dixie cup of coffee here. So I just think it's interesting that he's very preoccupied. He's very he's lost in the moment here because he's trying to cram something out, because Martin right now is doing something that is not necessarily by the book. He's not by the book right now. Let's say that again. Martin Brody is not doing something by the book right now because he's looking out for the common weal, as Peter Benchley described it, the common well-being of the people. But also, there was something that happened with him and Meadows. It's just implied. He's met Meadows before. We're going to see him at the Amity Town Hall talking to Meadows. Meadows and Martin Brody have already met a few times. So has Mayor Vaughn. So things have happened where they are like trying to establish, okay, this is how we're going to do things here. We are an island. We are kind of a local jurisdiction. We don't really have to do things by the book because people might get a little crazy. And we have to realize that as we watch this scene, that Martin Brody right here has Chrissie Watkins' wallet right here. And he's typing her information into a report. I'm going to play this and we're going to watch it again. Watch how he references it.
Now, we got a bunch of calls about that karate school. It seems that the 9-year-olds from the school have been...
Okay, forget about what Polly's saying. We're going to look at just the actions of Martin Brody. Intensely, got the glasses, typing away, already typed in, but he referenced the Chrissie Watkins wallet there.
My work, you've got to keep that outdated stuff off my desk. Just the pending, all right?
Yes,
right here, he reaches for the wallet.
Calls about that karate school. It seems that the 9-year-olds from...
So he's checking her ID and he's typing in pertinent information into this form. It's very, very interesting because this is where you have to realize who does not have access to this wallet. The coroner. The coroner, Dr. Nevin, does not have this wallet. He does not have her identity. He doesn't have anything, okay? It's Martin Brody that has the identity. And it's Martin Brody who's putting this information into this report. But there's something very peculiar about the report.
The school have been karateing the picket fences.
Okay, we just got the report of karateing the picket fences, and Polly is rattling off the things that Martin Brody has to do. We see an untouched newspaper here. Okay, this would be from maybe the Amity Island Gazette or something, any other newspaper here, Boston Globe. But Rolodex of numbers, phone, right? And then we have keys up here in the upper corner for probably various locations, various buildings around Amity Island, Town Hall, things like that the police chief can have access to. It's just we're establishing that we're just getting started here. But remember, this is very important as we're going to interpret the document here. These are all very important facts to establish. These are very important things to focus on as we're going to go to the document next.
Chief Brody's office, the medical inspector.
Okay, Polly does not know what's going on. It's not like Polly knows where these guys were all morning. She says, "You're up awful early." Is the chief in there to Hendricks? So she doesn't know that something happened. She also doesn't really know the extent of what's going on. So I think this is very, very interesting. We have to really focus on, it's not that she's just handling the day-to-day community business. She does not know exactly what happened that morning. So she just hands him the phone. It's the medical inspector. Okay, now we're going to go to the infamous police report. We're going to go through this, okay? It's important that we go through this line by line, this report, because we're going to understand exactly what Brody is doing here.
Yeah.
Okay, at 9 minutes and 24 seconds into the movie here, what can we see? We can actually see right at the top line. Let's just go line for line. We have her descent, Caucasian, hair brown, eyes brown. I thought her hair was kind of a sandy blonde. But if it was all wet and tangled with seaweed, I could guess you can kind of classify it as brown. Remember, what we're describing are the lines. Whoever's maybe listening on audio, we're describing line by line about this police report because we're going to have a serious revelation about the character of Martin Brody. That he's more of the book Martin Brody at this point. He's not this untouchable. He's not the Martin Brody that we might think he is. So we have a location of occurrence, South Beach Shores, right? So South Beach on Amity Island is the longer base, as we saw on the map of Amity Island for the Book of Quint. We already went through that in prior minutes. That's pretty standard. So let's see if we can advance this a little bit more because we are going line by line on this thing here. Okay, next line is age 24, build medium, complexion fair. Location of original illness or injury, South Beach Shores. Okay, so we have age is 24. We've already said she's older than their college student. She's not in a college anymore. So that makes sense that we've already talked. We're establishing the history of Chrissie Watkins, that she's not in college anymore. She's age 24. But as we sit, so when we go down to the next line, so the next line down, he's skipped many characteristics. He's skipped some other lines, but he has date, time, original illness, injury. And then he has occupation of deceased, student. Now, he's sort of making this up here. He doesn't know what her occupation is because no one really knew anything about her. He might have a student ID, but she's 24 years old. Is she really a student at 24? I don't think so. I think he's just kind of guessing here, because this entire report is a fabrication, okay? This is something that they're going to do to file. He's doing something that's supposed to be filed later on. And this is why. Because these are the dates that everyone always said, oh my God, what's going on here? What a glaring continuity error. You have date, time, original illness, injury, 7/1/74, 11:50 p.m. Date, time, deceased discovered, 7/2/74, 10:20 p.m. Date, time, death occurred, 7/1/74, 11:50 p.m. Now, what are we seeing here? First of all, let's get this out of the way. 1974, irrefutable proof that Jaws takes place in 1974. This was part of our 5 data points that we had back in episode 76 when we proved that Jaws takes place in 1974 using 5 visual data points that are in the movie, and this was one of them. It's the fact that the police report says 1974, so without a doubt, we're in 1974. Now, everyone says 7/1/72. How can this be possible if we know that Alex Kintner is killed on Sunday, June 29th, 1974, right? And also by our dates, we are already talking about, we know for a fact that we are already here on Friday, June 27th, 1974, 11:10 a.m. So there's no way that she was killed on 7/1/74. And then did it take a whole day, 11:50 p.m., and then it would take a whole 24 hours to find her body, 7/2/74 at 10:20 p.m. at night? This is why these times are so exact. There's no way this can be a continuity error, these dates and these times, because we already know that her body is discovered in the daytime. How can we have a body discovered at night, 10:20 p.m.? Okay? How can we have her illness, her time of death be at 11:50 p.m., but Brody gets the call from Cassidy in the morning, or from Hendricks in the morning at 7:47 a.m. And then they go over there to find her in the morning. So there's no way it took Cassidy 23 hours or 20 over a day to report, and then they went out and found her at night. This doesn't even jive with what we see in the movie. So what I'm trying to say is this, is that the coroner, Dr. Nevin, and Harry Meadows and Brody were at the site of Chrissie Watkins' remains. They were collecting her, and there was an active discussion. We're going to keep her as a Jane Doe. We're going to withhold her identity, because that's the definition of a Jane Doe. It's when it is legally withheld. They were going to withhold her, and then what they're going to do is they're going to report the girl as found on 7/2. 7/1, they're going to push her, the date of her death, all the way up. Now, why is this? Because when you do this at 7/2, at 10:20 p.m. on July 2nd, then the news cycle on July 3rd carries it. By then, you have the 4th of July. No one cares. It's all brushed over, okay? This was already planning to happen even before Shark Attack, even before should we close the beaches or not. They were going to keep Chrissie Watkins as a summer girl, just another girl, comes out to the island, no one goes missing, no one cares. We're going to just keep her as a Jane Doe in a bin, in her remains in 2 bins in the refrigerator at the coroner's office, in Dr. Nevin's medical examiner office, and we're going to keep that for the whole week. We're going to keep it from Friday. We don't have to report it now because it's Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. Now let's go to the our official Jaws movie timeline, brought to you by the Jaws Obsession and Quint's Shark and Shack. That's John Tedder's Etsy page over at etsy.com, Quint's Shark and Shack. We've been using this since forever, since the beginning of the Jaws Obsession, okay? We're going to look at where is 7/2. 7/2 is actually the date in the middle of next week. We know 4th of July is going to be on a Friday. So 4th of July is exactly a week from today, which is June 27th, when they discover Chrissie Watkins. If they report it now as even a dead body found, and they report her identity, that's when it hits the news cycle, and it's going to be on Monday and Tuesday, and it's going to really take over the news cycle before the 4th of July. If you report her identity and a girl was killed here on the 2nd, okay, in the media, and if you go wide and you report it to the Coast Guard, then that will be on the 2nd here, because they found her on the night of the 2nd. According to this report, it's going to be 7/2/74 at 10:20 p.m. is when she theoretically is going to be discovered. So that would be here. She would be discovered the night here, reported on Thursday. Contact the family or whoever, contact the Coast Guard, and run it through the system. 4th of July happens, it doesn't dominate the news cycle. Basically, 4th of July, Amity goes off without a hitch. It's just another summer girl comes along, swims out a little far, fishing boat comes along. That's what Mayor Vaughn's going to do about the Shark Attack information, but we're not even at Shark Attack yet. This is before there was any idea of Shark Attack, any talk of Shark Attack. Is what we're dealing with here is Martin Brody working with Meadows and Dr. Nevin about keeping Chrissie Watkins as an anonymous Jane Doe, and just only who knows about this? Just Cassidy, just Hendricks, Brody, and the Dr. Nevin and Meadows, and of course, obviously the mayor and selectmen. Just push it off, just push it, push these dates. This is proving to us. It's telling us that Brody is very much close to the novelization Brody here at this point in time in Jaws. is that he is one of those guys that he understands, and it was explained to him, as on page 30 in Jaws, as keeping a certain perspective on the rare, unfortunate occurrences that qualified as news. So in consultation, right? Addition to me, okay, consistent of suppressing rumors, Brody's contribution to the Amity understanding consisted of suppressing rumors with Harry Meadows, keeping a certain perspective on the rare, unfortunate occurrences that qualify as news. So that is what we are so early in the production of Jaws, is that this is what those dates are telling us. This is not a mistake. We as Jaws fans have to stop picking apart Jaws and saying, there's a goof, there's a mess up, they messed up there, they messed up there. We have to come together and realize this is part of the greater narrative. That Martin Brody is actually a hero's journey in one man that's bending rules for the common weal. He's bending rules. He's keeping a certain perspective on things by suppressing rumors with Harry Meadows at the beginning of Jaws. That's normal Martin Brody. All right. That's what he was hired to do. And for years, I've looked at this and I've tried to think, well, how could a really good, honest cop justify putting 7-2, 7-4 as the discovery at 10:20 p.m.? How could a good guy do that? And I'm going, oh, because he's not that good. Maybe he's just doing what a politician would do. Maybe he's also acting as a politician. Maybe he was hired as a politician. Maybe he's persuaded, hey, if you do this, we won't have to have that black eye going into 4th of July. And remember, you have to be reelected. So how about having a real hit summer on this? A hit summer on your first summer. You can, we're not going to have this. We can actually smooth this over, suppress the rumor as it says in Jaws. And Martin Brody's like, okay. And that's why he's doing this. That's why he's cramming this out. That's why he's so preoccupied. That's why he's forgetting the towel. He's forgetting the cup. Again, for the second time, he's sitting there because he is all involved and wrapped up in the moment. But the pivotal moment here, this is going to change everything. And we're going to go to the script now, and we're going to actually see what happened. See, so he's already talked to Meadows. He's already talked to the coroner. But now the coroner calls him up, and now we get the information that's going to send this into a whole nother universe. Okay, shark attack. So the coroner calls him up and says, from the book, the voice on the other end says, I'm going to put down shark attack. It makes the most sense for you unless you know other considerations. And he says, is it possibly a murder? Did this guy go to work on her with a chainsaw? Because they got Cassidy there, and the coroner says that it could have been. He says, I mean, if it's conceivable, just barely, that some nut could have done this job on the girl with an axe and a saw. So there was a possibility. They talked about that in the book. People are sometimes distracted by that it says coroner's office. He forgot the O as in coroner's office. So it says coroner's office. And then it says C coroner, received by C coroner without the O. And you can see the address here is just coroner's office. I always said that was a way of just doing a quick abbreviation, that he's just going corner. Like he could have put CRNRS, because in the Coast Guard, when I was doing reports, when we would have to do reports, if you were running the communications desk, you would have to start a case file whenever there was a distress call. So if you were doing the communications and the boat crew was out there, you would be doing reports. And a lot of times there was a lot of abbreviations you would use because there was only so much space you could go in there. So you would do different things like a report would RPRT, things like that, like truck number, TRK, That's what you would do when you would file out these reports. So you could almost say that's Martin Brody just typing fast and just abbreviating it, just trying to go CORNERS, whatever. But that's kind of it's trivial, and I don't like to get too lost in the weeds on that because it really doesn't tell me much about what's going on. It's not as big as these dates. These dates are so important that he's filing the wrong date here because he's now involved in the point is that this is the report that has her identity on it, and this is what he's going to file later on next week. That's what I'm talking about. We have address, something road, like Quarry Road or something road, Vineyard Woods. And I looked up, there isn't a Vineyard Woods on Martha's Vineyard. And I also looked up where there is any other a Vineyard Woods. If anyone knows where there could be a Vineyard Woods in the Northeast, let me know here at jawsob2025@gmail.com. I'm very interested in this address here because that tells me a lot about Chrissie Watkins. But then again, it could be a fictional Vineyard Woods, just like Amity Island is a fictional island. So I'm going to be utilizing this Vineyard Woods a little bit more with work that I'm doing now that we'll talk about in episode 100. But that's very important, that little Vineyard Woods thing. And then the probable cause of death is now... Okay, shark attack. Now, this is very important here. Very, very important here. We're going to go over to the shooting script. Let's bring the shooting script up. Okay. Well, first, before we bring the shooting script up, how does Martin Brody react? Okay. This right here is the moment. This is the moment where good man Martin Brody, hero Martin Brody, man that wants to do the right thing, comes out.
You to go.
Right there. Hangs up the phone, man of action. If this had been thought of as a shark attack before, he never would have sat down and do this report. He would have already been painting the signs, okay? He would have already been doing this stuff. This is the resolve because the Dr. Nevin calls him and says, I think this is a shark attack unless you have other considerations, unless you think it's an axe murderer. This is definitely a shark attack. Brody's already cased, he's sized up Cassidy. There's no way this kid killed her. And his gut instinct is that, yes, it's not it's definitely a shark attack. And he's a man of action. He's going to snap into action here. This is where the good man Martin Brody comes out, the one that doesn't want to be the politician, that he's ready to snap into this. And I think this is an amazing scene. Because he went from a false, by pushing this, now all of a sudden plan A, the whole plan A about keeping her Jane Doe and filing those dates later next week. Now he's like, screw that. This is now going to be a whole new ball game here. We have a shark attack and I want to close beaches because I'm thinking about my sons. I'm thinking about my wife. And I'm also thinking about all the other people that are going swimming. And I don't want anything to happen to them. It's just his gut instinct takes over. And those dates make it more important here. Those false dates make it more important. But I want to go over to the screenplay here. The screenplay, and this is the same thing that goes through, that's in Benchley's screenplay, that's held over through the Howard Sackler contributions, through the John Milius contributions, and held over into even Carl Gottlieb. This is what it says. The phone rings, Polly picks it up. This is scene 20. Somebody pass away in the night, she asks. So Polly actually doesn't know that anything happened. That's what leads us to the same thing that we determined here, is that Polly does not know what happened. And Brody wrestles the phone between ear and collar, listening as he turns to the typewriter. Cause of death, line rolls into place. The hammers punch out shark attack. Brody leans forward, staring at what he just wrote. Polly cocks her head and removes the phone from his ear. Polly, what's the matter? Brody takes a breath. A new resolve comes over him. A new resolve comes over him. Polly, I want to know the water recreation is on for today. Right this minute, Brody gets up and moves hastily towards the door. So, a new resolve comes over him.
Polly, I want a list of all the water activities that the city fathers are planning for today, all right?
When we say a new resolve comes over him, it's even applied, it's implied in the screenplay is that he was already under influence of some status quo. He was already on a plan where that Chrissie Watkins is just going to be a Jane Doe, an anonymous girl, and we're going to hold this over the weekend. And then all of a sudden, a new resolve comes over him. So he snaps into action. So this is basically Martin Brody saying, forget that old plan. We're going with this one.
Now, the fire chief wants you to go over the 4th of
Polly,
July.
I want a list of all the water activities that the city fathers are planning for today, all right?
All right, I want a list of all the water activities that the city fathers are planning for today. We've already said the city fathers is in my past episodes is another term for the selectmen, that the group of the 5 selectmen are city elders, town elders, or city fathers. That's what Chief Brody is saying here. So the fact is that, remember, here he comes out of the office. We're dollying back with the camera out of that office, and what comes into frame is Ellen's cup, either Ellen's cup from this morning or Ellen's cup from the day before. We also have jacket going over the towel as we see the cup. All of this is very interesting because it's telegraphing to us, and I'm going to say this over and over again, is that Martin Brody is a good man that has a lot of stuff going on in his mind, and he's forgetting a lot of things. It's almost like if he forgot this and forgot this, he also forgot his way in dealing with Chrissie Watkins right from the bat, is that they were going to keep her. He agreed to keep her as a Jane Doe and then say that her body was discovered in a week later because he's worried about optics. He's worried about public perception. And that is so interesting. This frame right here, just in this frame, coffee cup, towel, new resolve, big time. Just a totally new Martin Brody emerges here from the status quo Martin Brody of a guy that was persuaded and pushed into a corner. He was already pushed into the corner, boxed in, so to speak, by Meadows and the medical examiner. And now a new resolve comes over him, and we're going to see later on that then he's going to be boxed in by the mayor, by Meadows, by the medical examiner. It really comes at him full force a second time. That's what makes that ferry scene so special that's coming up in the next few minutes, is that it's the second time that Martin Brody's been told what to do. The first time is, you're going to file these dates. The best way is we're going to file these dates, and I'm going to print it in the paper next week for this missing girl. She's just a girl. We're just going to keep her as Jane Doe for now. It's not illegal. We're just withholding her name, and we're withholding these dates, and we're going to put it later on, as in she was killed on 7/1 and we found her on 7/2. It works better for the island that way, Marty. And Martin said, okay. And he went back and started typing this report. And there's 2 reports. Remember, the medical examiner doesn't have access to her name. So theoretically, as long as he doesn't see that wallet, he can say it's Jane Doe. Okay. He could say, I have a Jane Doe on this date. And then they could say, well, we found her identity and we actually found her on this date. So a lot of fudging of the numbers that were going on here. But this is the first time that Martin Brody was told what to do. And the second time will be on the ferry. Let's get out of this. We're only at 9:41 here. 9 minutes, 41 seconds here. We're seeing forgetting towel again. We're also, we have representing Ellen Brody is the coffee cup.
Right away.
Hendricks,
Hey, Chief.
where do we keep the beach closed signs?
Chief.
We never had any.
No?
No?
Chief.
Where do we keep the beach closed signs? We never had any. Okay, so very interesting stuff here. We have ripped Alka-Seltzer wrappers over in the corner. Let me move that. So we see right here, we have ripped Alka-Seltzer tablet wrappers in the corner there. That's a nice little detail. We also have, he asked about beach closed signs. We never had any. So this is going to be, and we have to assume that, and we're going to have a line later on, that Hendricks, these are your people. Hendricks comes from Amity Island. He's been on Amity Island for a while now, and that he's pretty much raised there, possibly an islander himself. Younger guy, easily influenced, but also knows a lot of the people. So when he says that we've never had any beach closed signs, that's pretty intense. That what Chief Brody wants to do is something that's never been done before. So that line indicates that what we're going to be seeing is something never been done before. Polly's following him with the notepad and her pencil.
There's a damn truck with New Hampshire plates on it smack in front of my store.
The planning for today, all right?
A damn truck with New Hampshire plates. I like this little guy.
Hey, Chief.
Where do we keep the beach closed signs?
Chief.
We never had any.
No? Chief. There's a damn truck with New Hampshire plates on it smack in front of my store.
All right. Okay, so that's one of the shop owners. And he's really, he's coming in, charging in with a New Hampshire plates truck that's parked in front of his store. It's very interesting. So we're talking 11:10. The guy's already dressed up. He's factoring in that this guy came in, probably rode in on his little bicycle there, and went in to file a complaint about this. Someone's parked in front of his store. So immediately Martin Brody snaps into action. Let's continue on here. This is the exterior of Amity Police Department, right? Amity Police Department is what the sign says. You see Chief Brody's Chevy Blazer parked in the back there. He's going to come out. And this is...
Fill out the form. Just fill it out.
Just have him fill out the forms. Just fill it out. So he's talking to Polly and saying, just have him fill out those forms. Just fill it out for that complaint, because he doesn't have time to deal with the complaint right now. And now we're going to get to see a beautiful town of Amity, the exterior with the picket fences that are everywhere. This is Edgartown, Massachusetts, on Martha's Vineyard. Okay, when he zips up his jacket here, you will see a flap of the towel. So the towel is still underneath his jacket. Remember that. That's going to play into going ahead. The Brody shoulder towel. It's a symbol of him forgetting himself, the simple things, that he's so zoned in on the task at hand that he forgets the simpler things. Very interesting, because it adds a lot to our relatability with the character, because we all forget on things. This guy is not infallible. That's the word I've been searching for. He is not infallible. He's not the guy that we might think does everything right or just wants to do everything right. Is that he is already involved in this political machine that is Amity Island, that is the 5 selectmen, that is Mayor Vaughn's domain. And that's what those dates on that report indicate. And here he goes, marching down. Now he's under, remember, a new resolve comes over him. But right here is the 10th minute. So here we are at minute number 10 with Martin Brody. Couple things that I'm going to go over. I know we are really long on this episode here. This is one of the longer ones, but hey, we got to get all this stuff out. We got to talk about the when Hooper comes in the scenario and reads the amended report with the proper dates. When after Alex Kittner, to take this theory on, we're going to talk about this in later minutes, but after Alex Kittner dies on June 29th, after Alex Kittner dies on June 29th, remember, we're here on June 27th. After Alex Kittner dies here, June 29th, the whole thing is thrown up into the air, okay? That they are going to finally file that they found a girl, and that girl was killed by a shark attack right around this area, okay? And that's when Martin Brody says we've called for an expert from the Oceanographic Institute. We've called in for an expert. So when Hooper arrives, everyone up until this point, the people that know, only refer to Chrissie Watkins as a girl, okay? And even Martin Brody does. They never refer to her by her name. Hooper is the first one that actually humanizes Chrissie Watkins, and he's the only one that does it in the movie. All right, she's mentioned as just a girl or summer girl. Let's run through these.
Well, what else could have done that to that girl?
Summer girl goes swimming. Swims out a little far. She tires.
So no one really talks. Everybody talks about her like she's just a girl. No one really says anything by her name. Even Hooper doesn't really say her name when he first introduces himself.
You're the guy we called. I'm Brody.
Oh, I'm very glad to meet you.
Yeah, I'm glad to meet you, too.
Listen, I know you got a lot on your hands right now, but...
What can we do for you?
Well, I think the best thing for me to do is to see the remains of the first victim, the girl on the beach.
The remains of the first victim, the girl on the beach. So it's not Hooper's the one that first gives her, reports her name when he reads the amended report on when he arrives on July 2nd.
Victim identified as Christine Watkins, female Caucasian.
Christine Watkins. Now, Miss Kittner...
That a girl got killed here last week.
Only says that a girl got killed here last week. So she just found out on this July 2nd that a girl got killed here last week, which was Friday, June 27th. So this also it backs up the fact that they kept her identity from the public. They also kept that they even found a girl from the public because no one talks about this. No one talks about that there was a girl that was killed on June 27th, especially when they're all on the beach on Sunday, June 29th.
They caught a shark, not the shark. Not the shark that killed Chrissie Watkins.
So there it is, that Hooper's the only one that ever really humanizes Chrissie Watkins by using her name once in the medical examiner's office and then once here at the dinner table. And that is all after he reads her name on July 2nd. So with that actually is proof of this theory that I have here and that we're breaking here on the Jaws obsession is that those dates were all part of a prior plan to cover up the identity of Chrissie Watkins so they didn't report her to National News Service. If you watch Hooper's reaction in the medical examiner's office, when he says, "Did you notify the Coast Guard?" Watch the guilty look on Martin Brody's face, as well as Dr. Nevin here.
Thank you very much. Partially denuded bone remaining. This was no boat accident. Did you notify the Coast Guard about this?
No. It was only local jurisdiction.
Right there. That is such an important line because Hooper is now calling Martin out on his nonsense with Meadows and Dr. Nevin from the 27th. Like, did you notify the Coast Guard about this? No. Martin is very, very disappointed in himself right now because he went through with this where they didn't notify anyone until even right now is when her name is just coming out. Okay? That's how important this is that once Alex Kintner died, everything from that plan A changes. It's now Summer Girl comes out, boating accident, all that stuff. But once he dies and the shark claims another victim, now we have to actually get Chrissie Watkins' name out in the public. We have to show that we discovered her, and we have to backdate this. We have to go back and say we found her on the 27th because we got to come clean. But yet that is what happened, is that this was only a local jurisdiction, that this is what happened. And he looks over almost at the corner at Dr. Nevin, and he was like, we played this wrong.
Partially denuded bone remaining. This was no boat accident. Did you notify the Coast Guard about this?
No. It was only local jurisdiction.
So very disappointed in himself. And it explains more about those odd dates and times on that report that Martin was typing out. He was part of this problem. Okay, and remember, nobody talks about Chrissie Watkins even after Alex Kintner is killed. No one's talking about a shark that killed the girl on the beach. This amended report or the proper dates were not filed until after Alex Kintner. But one of the proof that we have here is we have to listen to Mrs. Taft. That's right. I don't think that's funny at all lady, Mrs. Taft, We have to listen to her reaction here. Okay, after Alex Kittner dies on that Sunday, let's listen to Mrs. Taft. What does she say here at the town hall?
Alex Kittner is the kid who was missing at the beach. His mother says it was a shark.
We don't even know that there's a shark around here.
Right there. We don't even know that there's a shark around here. So she has not even heard about Shark Attack and Chrissie Watkins. Chrissie Watkins wasn't even reported found at this point. Once this June 29th attack on Alex Kittner rolls around, this is on the Monday following that. We still have people like Mrs. Taft saying, we don't even know there's a shark around here because there was never, that first victim was never reported. Her identity wasn't even given because of those faulty dates. She was going to be reported as found later this week. And this is what we have here. We have Mrs. Taft talking to Selectman Denherter, and he's one of the town selectmen. He knows there was a girl that was found. He knows that it was a shark attack, and he knows about the whole cover-up thing. But she's saying we don't know there's a shark attack around here because she's saying, oh, it's just the kid disappeared. We don't know if it was really a shark.
Alex Kittner is the kid who was missing at the beach. His mother says it was a shark.
We don't even know that there's a shark around here. Look, I can't argue with you. I can't talk to you.
All right, so we're going to tackle that later on, and that comes up in the 18th minute. And but Mrs. Taft saying we don't even know that there's a shark around here really comes into what we have as we hit 10 minutes here. Martin Brody walking all by himself, preoccupied, forgetting about that shoulder towel. Poor Martin Brody, already troubled because he was already doing the wrong thing before he learned about Shark Attack. And then once the Shark Attack comes around, this is Martin going, I'm going to a new resolve, as it says in the script that Benchley wrote and Carl Gottlieb wrote, a new resolve comes over him. This is Martin Brody going, no, I'm going to stand up and I'm going to be different than other chiefs of police may have been in New York City. I'm not going to be that guy that gets told what to do. I'm going to stand up for myself. So this is actually Martin Brody. Why does he go so hard on with these? Why does he go so hard at the beaches closed and all of this? Because he was already being persuaded to do the wrong thing before even learning about Shark Attack. If we understand this and if we know this, we know that Martin Brody is a much more complex character. And going forward, I'm hoping to actually add to this as we watch Jaws, but with what I have been working on over the last few years, I hope that we actually can understand more that there has to be more closure to Brody's arc than what we were given with Jaws 1 and 2. Okay, so with that, I want to say thank you to everybody for listening. This has been Jaws Obsession, episode 98, Expanded Jaws Universe, minute number 9.
Show me the way to go home. I'm tired, I want to go to bed. I had a little think about an hour ago, and it's gotten right to my head. Wherever I may roam.
The movie Jaws is copyrighted property of Universal Studios. Any references and sampling from the movie Jaws in this episode is intended to fall within sections 107 of the Copyright Act. The copyrighted materials are fairly used for the purposes of criticism, comment, reporting, teaching, and research. The materials used here are protected by the fair use guidelines of Section 107 of the Copyright Act. All rights reserved to the copyright owners. Yes, thank you very much for listening. Remember to tune in to episode 170 of the Cut and Retie podcast, the fishing broadcast that I was on. Joe, he was a great host, and we had a great time. I think it was just a great interview. It was being able to sit back and talk about Jaws, as well as the Book of Quint, and go a little bit into that. Also, remember to read that Collider article about Steven Spielberg's original intent for Jaws 2 to be the prequel, to have prequel elements around the USS Indianapolis. Exciting new revelation there. The Book of Quint, still bestseller. It's now at currently, I think it was currently 16th or 17th the top 100 in the world historical thrillers on Audible. It would be great to have you on board if you want to go over Audible, Spotify, Apple, Google Play Books. You can listen anywhere to that audiobook. And once we get all caught up, we'll be on the same page as we go through these EJU episodes, the Expanded Jaws Universe episodes. This is just such a fun time for myself. And I know I can get a little long on these, but there's so much to go over. And I want to thank you for listening and for sticking with me on this. We have so many exciting things, revelations to go in future minutes of the Jaws obsession. So for that, until next show, farewell and adieu, and show me the way to go home.